Hey, so if you're like me, you're probably brand new to making a podcast and probably have no clue where to start and probably don't have the equipment to do so. But let me tell you something. There is an app that will allow you to create your podcast and actually give you the tools that you need to make it. It's called Anchor. It's free to use and you can download it right to your phone or your computer. And Anchor will also help you distribute your podcast so it can be heard on places like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it has everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you're looking to use your voice to speak to something that you are passionate about or something that makes your heart sing, download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. And you can download Anchor from wherever apps are sold. Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with me, your girl Stephanie Hardy. I know it's been a minute since I made a new episode. It's just that I would have made one last week, but I got busy with all the Mother's Day fun, and I hope you had a good one. If you celebrated that. Stuff has been just, wonderfully hectic, even with everything else that's going on in the world. But I'm glad to be back with you on this weekend. So now what we're going to go into news and gossip-ish, and then we're going to go into a very special wrestling fan story time where I talk about a lot of great things that have been going on with this podcast and its, exposure and everything. And then I'm going to talk about what happened this week in wrestling. So welcome to the 12th episode of the Hardy Wrestling Podcast with me, your girl, Stephanie Hardy. Okay, so we're at news and gossip-ish, and now we're going to talk about some breaking news that's actually popping off on social media a little bit at a time right now since it just came out. It's the fact that former Cruiserweight champion Drew Gulak has just been released by WWE, and the only thing that I can confirm right about now is the fact that he has been placed on the WWE alumni page on the WWE.com website, and it's kind of strange because just last night we saw him wrestle against Daniel Bryan in a really classic match for the for the Intercontinental Championship in that tournament. And apparently he's just been, announced as being released. So, very unfortunate because he's really talented, and it seemed like they kind of gave him a little bit of a storyline between him and Daniel because he was talking as if he was sort of better than Daniel Bryan, and Daniel Bryan was just like, I bet you're not. And then they fought each other a few months ago at Elimination Chamber, and they fought in an incredibly stellar technical masterpiece that I will recommend that you do go back and watch. And then they did the same thing last night, and now he's gone. So I wish him the best in everything that he does. But yeah, that news just broke a few minutes ago. So, kind of sad start, to it. But now we're going to go into Roman Reigns and how he, is set to make a cameo in the Netflix film, The Wrong Missy with David Spade, who's like a comic actor. Netflix has already debuted this movie, and it came out this past Wednesday, along with stars David Spade and Lauren Lapkus. And Roman Reigns posted a clip on his Instagram page, and he was really excited about it and everything. And this is his third film, after having appeared in 2019's Fast and Furious Presents Hobbs and Shaw with The Rock and Jason Statham. But he's also made small appearances in movies like Countdown in 2016 and 2017's The Jetsons and WWE Robo WrestleMania. So be on the lookout for that. And I will also mention the fact that Roman Reigns gave a shout out to my alma mater, Fairfield High Preparatory School, last week, in giving sort of like a baby speech and a baby congratulations to the class of 2020, and talked about all of their accomplishments for this year with Division I championships, because our boys basketball team did win that championship. And he also shouted out scholarships and everything. So it was really cool to know that he actually released a video, congratulating, the class of 2020. Because as you know, graduation has basically been sort of flipped upside down with everything that's going on with the crisis. So the fact that he actually shouted out, my alma mater and their graduating class this year is amazing. So from this podcast, I want to wish every graduate a happy graduation. Congratulations on your accomplishment. And I hope you're able to make it in the world, past all of the craziness, and just, be successful and be awesome as you are. So, yeah. Back into the world of wrestling, Sami Zayn was stripped of his Intercontinental Championship, and the title was now declared vacant. So, since he is no longer able to compete, a tournament for the now vacant Intercontinental title is going to be held on SmackDown over the coming weeks. It started last night, and last night it was the match that I mentioned between Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak, and also Elias versus King Baron Corbin. Now, so far, Daniel Bryan has qualified for the next round, and so has Elias. And basically, the last time Sami Zayn appeared on screen was night 1 of WrestleMania, when he retained the title against Daniel Bryan. Now, it's kind of sucky that Sami Zayn's reign had to end this way, because this was the first main roster title that he had ever won. He's probably been on the main roster for maybe 3 or 4 years at the most. So now that that's ended, they're sort of fighting to see who's going to be the next in line for the title. And I was really hoping Drew Gulak was going to move forward in that match against, Daniel Bryan. But so that's where we are with that. And I hope, that's going to be, really good. Also in the news, we have Enes Kanter, who has been offered a WWE contract. He is a center for the NBA team, the Boston Celtics, and he has a standing offer to join WWE, and he's definitely considered transitioning to pro wrestling once his NBA career ends. He briefly enjoyed a run with the 24/7 championship last September, but as you know now, the 24/7 championship is now held by Rob Gronkowski of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Because, he won it during WrestleMania time because he was the host, and now he sort of ran off with it and never to be seen again. So hopefully, if Enes Kanter wants to come to WWE after he finishes playing basketball, he'll be welcomed with open arms, because you don't necessarily have to be like a full-on indie wrestler or wrestler your whole life in order to join the WWE. You can be an athlete of any kind of sports or any kind of, bodybuilding or anything like that, and come into the company, and they'll train you and teach you the right ways to do things. So that would be really cool. Also in the news, we have CM Punk, who decided to troll fans who speculated that he was the man behind the computer keyboard and all of the cameras on SmackDown lately. So if you've been watching SmackDown lately, there's been this mysterious figure, I call him Snitchman 3000, that sort of revealed the wrongdoings of Sonya Deville and Dolph Ziggler in terms of the Otis and Mandy storyline. And he wears like a black hoodie, and he sits behind a computer and a whole bunch of, security camera screens looking at everything that's been going on. So people on Twitter have been speculating that it could be the Iconics, or it could be anyone like CM Punk, or just anyone in particular that might have been missing, or even Mustafa Ali, who we haven't seen on TV in a while. But something that does come up a lot in terms of Mustafa Ali and that theory is the fact that whenever the screen comes on, it comes on with that blue circle with the light. And that was something that Mustafa Ali kind of trademarked himself on before he took, an absence. So it could be him, but a lot of people really felt like it was CM Punk. But CM Punk sort of serves as an analyst on WWE Backstage on FS1, and he hasn't really been active in the world of wrestling or at least in the WWE since 2014 when he quit the company. But at the start of this past Tuesday's episode of WWE Backstage, he turned around in his chair, with his hood up like the mysterious figure on SmackDown, and joked and said, "I'm just watching WrestleMania 3. And he also went on to praise the events of the Money in the Bank matches with the men and the women. And he lauded the creativity of the matches given the limitations of everything that's been going on in the world. And he also felt that Asuka and Otis were the right choices to have won the Money in the Bank briefcases. And I can't wait to get into that part in my wrestling fan story time. Also in the news, we have the boxing OG Iron Mike Tyson and how he's going to appear on AEW's TNT Championship match at the Double or Nothing pay-per-view. He is going to present the new TNT Championship belt at Double or Nothing on May the 23rd, and that match is going to include Cody Rhodes, or just Cody as he's referred to on AEW. And he's going to be fighting Lance Archer for the title. And basically, you know how Mike Tyson is also not only just a boxing OG, he's a little bit of a wrestling OG. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame, into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2012. And he was a big participant in the Austin and Tyson storyline in the 90s during the Attitude Era. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he plays in the world of professional wrestling now, and especially with a different promotion. So that's going to be really cool. So if you want to check that out, please do. And there's been a lot of stuff going on in the news. So that's it for your news and gossip-ish. And now we're going to transition into Wrestling Fan Story Time, where I discuss everything that's been going on with Money in the Bank and the whole Asuka and Becky Lynch storyline and how it escalated this week, and so many different things. So stay with me. In this week's Wrestling Fan Story Time, I'm going to discuss how powerful wrestling is in terms of connecting people from all over the world and what's been happening to me lately. Something that I've been doing is connecting with other podcasters all over the country and also all over the world as well. And one of the best things that happened to me last weekend was participating in an interview with BJ from the Mining for Mayhem podcast. And he's from Australia, and it was a really great experience to actually be on one of his episodes, and just all of the things that we were able to discuss in terms of what we enjoy about wrestling and how we started, and all the things that, meant a lot to him from watching Australian wrestlers succeed, and just, all around in general, just being able to just share in that was an amazing experience. So if you want to go back and listen to that interview, called Alabama Slammer, please find Mining for Mayhem wherever you can. Definitely find it on Anchor or YouTube, and please listen to it, because it was a great experience to do and participate in, and to just be able to connect with someone from a completely different continent than you, and to talk about something that you both equally love was just really amazing. And we talked for like an hour. It was cool. And to also, this weekend, I watched Money in the Bank. And I also co-hosted, for the first time, I co-hosted a virtual watch party with JT from the O-Face Wrestling Podcast. And I hosted about we both hosted about 5 different people at a time as we were watching the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. And I want to give a huge shout out to Jaxie Scarlett and D Banks and Timothy Flair 90 and Jarrett Hicks for joining into the watch party with us. It was absolutely incredible to have watched this, very different pay-per-view sort of take place, and to be able to watch it with people whom you've never even met but yet to connect on such a deep level with it was just really cool. Now, I'm going to discuss all of the parts that I liked about Money in the Bank. I loved, of course, the ladder matches, and how both the men and the women were set to take place in headquarters of WWE, and how they started from the bottom floor all the way to the top. Like, I absolutely loved all the moments where, all the comedic moments where they were bumping into each other. There was a moment where Rey Mysterio actually, left some weights on AJ Styles on the floor. There was a point where Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles ran into Vince McMahon's office, and Vince was like, yo, like, get out of my office. And they just got out, and and even he was using hand sanitizer. And I love the moment where Dana Brooke definitely thought she had won the briefcase, but Stephanie McMahon was the one to tell her, like, no, you didn't win the briefcase. The briefcase is actually on the roof. You're actually in the Money in the Bank conference room. And but that briefcase was real cute though. But anyway, and a food fight that happened was really cool. And then just the idea that while Asuka had made it to the top of the ladder, it's like Baron Corbin was trying to fight with her and make it seem like, oh, well, you're going to move out of my way because it's my moment. But then she knocked him down in order to get her, Money in the Bank contract, and she won that match, and that was really amazing. But then she wound up winning more than just the match, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. And then you had AJ Styles, who thought for sure he was going to win it, but he actually didn't, and he wound up dropping it after tussling with a couple of other people with it. And then Otis wound up catching it, below the rope. And I was just like, what? It was the most amazing thing, because he was one of my predictions to win the men's match. And the fact that he actually won just made me feel really happy. But something that I am seeing on social media is where people are wondering, like, if it's going to fail. And it makes me sad, because it's just like, just because, he's a goofy character doesn't mean you should just, not take him seriously as a competitor who could very well win one of the championships that they have for the men. Like, just because, it makes me sad, because it's like, just because you're goofy doesn't mean you can't be about your business. And just because you smile and have a love life with a gorgeous girl like Mandy doesn't mean you can't be taken seriously. So I was really glad with how the match, the Money in the Bank matches turned out. Now, in terms of the rest of the pay-per-view, I loved that Jeff Hardy was able to sort of win against Cesaro, since he's back now, and sort of bouncing back with that. The New Day hung on to their tag titles, after a pretty good match, even though deep down inside my soul was just kind of low-key rooting for the Lucha House Party to win. But, they just keep, poo-pooing them off. But I just kind of want them to sort of get more shine later on, if it's possible. And, Bobby Lashley fought R-Truth. And, I guess that worked the way it was supposed to. I mean, Bobby Lashley, it seems like Bobby Lashley's sort of in for more of a push. And then Bayley beat Tamina, which kind of broke my heart, because this is like one of the few chances that Tamina has ever gotten for a championship. And it made me sad that she lost it. But honestly, when Sasha was able to sort of cheat and sort of slide her way into the match in order to help Bayley win, it just sort of, planted more and more seeds that that her and Bayley and their friendship are basically going to fall apart at some point. And Drew won his match against Seth, and I guess that basically sent him into a tizzy. And and we're going to talk more about that later too. And Braun Strowman retained his title against, regular Bray Wyatt and not the Fiend Bray Wyatt. So that was, an interesting choice. But all in all, I enjoyed Money in the Bank, and I absolutely enjoyed watching it with the people I watched it with. And I look forward to doing more co-hosting with pay-per-views pretty soon. And I will be posting those on social media more. And also, I had the opportunity to connect with those wrestling girls on this past Friday in an interview with JT from O-Face Wrestling Podcast. And that was really cool too. So if you ever want to check out any more wrestling podcasts other than mine, please check them out because they're really good and they have really great content constantly. And also follow them on social media as well. And now I'm going to talk about something that really touched me this week, which is the Becky Lynch announcement of her pregnancy. So I mentioned how Asuka had won the Money in the Bank contract. And with that contract, that gives you the opportunity to cash in on any championship opportunity within the next year. So from now until like, say, May 2021, you can hold that briefcase that long, and cash in whenever you want to for a match. And there have been, other female winners, even though just, recently in the past few years, they've had, women Money in the Bank matches. But Asuka won, and there was a lot of intrigue, wondering who she was going to cash in on and when was it going to happen. But then you also have the idea that Becky Lynch had not been on television for a while. And a lot of people were speculating, oh, well, maybe she's doing this, or maybe, she's injured, or maybe this, that, and the third. Y'all know how we do as wrestling fans. We speculate until we find out the truth. And even then, we're still not satisfied. But aside from that, Monday, she started Monday Night Raw, and she came out with the Money in the Bank briefcase, which I thought was really odd, considering Asuka had just won it. And she mentioned how, she had started in wrestling. She started in WWE in 2013, and how she didn't really have any friends at first. And now she's, branched out and and she didn't think that anybody was going to believe in her as a wrestler. But somehow or another, everyone did started believing in her and loving her the way that we do. And because she loves the fans so much, she felt like she owed it to us to give us an explanation as to why she'll have to be going away for a while. But before she went into it, Asuka interrupted her and was like, yo, like, you got my title. I mean, not my title, but you've got my briefcase. Why? This is mine, And Becky said, yeah, this is yours. And, you worked so hard to earn it. But then she opened it with a combination. And inside of the briefcase was the Raw Women's Championship. And she told Asuka, even though you didn't know this, you actually won the Raw Women's Championship when you won the briefcase. And Asuka, of course, celebrated. She was excited that the championship was now hers. But Asuka was sort of wondering, why, she was giving it to her, as was probably everybody else. I was sitting on the couch looking kind of confused, like, what's going on? Why are you leaving, Becky? Like, what is it? What? And she told Asuka, you're going to be a warrior while I'm going to go be a mother. And when she said that, like, I was absolutely shocked. Like, my mouth was open. And when Becky started crying, I started crying. Like, y'all, our sweet Becky is pregnant. Like, she's pregnant. Like, just whoa. Like, I knew her and Seth, were very serious, and they're in love, and they're engaged, to be married and all of that. And congratulations to them for that. But, I was not expecting her to say, I'm pregnant. Like, like, you're really about to have a baby, a whole child. And I was just so excited for her because if you think about where Becky Lynch started, she started wrestling. She knew she loved it, but then she sort of fell out with it. And then after she fell out with it, she did a bunch of, other random things, like a lot of us 20-year-olds tend to do when we know we want to do a specific thing, but we're not certain if we have what it takes. So we sort of try different things. And then she went back to wrestling, and she grew in the indies, and then she came to NXT, and she was the dancing Irish girl dressed in green. And then eventually, she grew to be the orange-haired girl who loved steampunk stuff. And she showed a lot of grit, in that, because I remember the first match I saw her wrestling NXT, at NXT TakeOver Unstoppable, was her versus Sasha Banks for the NXT Women's Championship. And that was one of the roughest women's matches I had ever seen. And I was just like, whoa, like, I love Sasha, but now I really love Becky too, and I was rooting for her and her success. And then when she came up to the main roster, it seemed as if when she was a good girl, they were putting so much emphasis on Charlotte and so much emphasis on Sasha as well, but not really that much on Becky. And they were making it seem like she was just sort of, like the irrelevant horsewoman. Because even when Bayley came up, they kind of gave her, a whole lot of, good treatment. But Becky was always sort of poo-pooed off to the side, and it just wasn't necessarily fair because she was really talented. She sort of had to work to get to that point. And after she had worked for so long to get, more title opportunities, after she had won the SmackDown Women's Championship for the first time, she had it sort of taken away from her because Charlotte was sort of shoehorned in. And after she lost it to Charlotte, Becky lost her mind and basically turned heel and was like, I'm sick of you always getting these opportunities when it was supposed to be me. And that made us fall even more in love with the character of Becky. She became the man. She became, this woman who was tired of the establishment. Basically, the 2010, 2020 version of Stone Cold Steve Austin is what she became. She became anti-establishment. And it was something that we just sunk our teeth into and just didn't want to let go. Now, mind you, there are a couple of fans who feel like, oh, well, she had the title all this time and, I'm tired of her and all this other stuff. But my thing is, when you think about her journey and how far she got from being considered one of the irrelevant ones to now being the main female star on the show and on the, merchandise and on the ice cream bars and on the cereal and everything else like that. It's just, she's worked so hard to get to this point. She's risen to become the star that she always figured she could be. And now that she's made all of her dreams come true, she's been Becky Two Belt, she's been the man, she's had her nose broken on television, she's done it all. And now she's going to go and be a mother. And I for one cannot wait to see her evolve into, herself, being a professional wrestler while also, being a mom as well. And I can't wait to see Seth Rollins, furthermore, evolve in real life to be a dad. Like, they just seem so happy, and I'm just so glad they have this opportunity to become a family. And I'm also very proud of Asuka because there was because I believe even Becky said that she felt like Asuka got the short run of things after she lost her undefeated streak to Charlotte at WrestleMania 2 years ago. And after that, she sort of, on TV, they sort of stumbled with how to truly, book Asuka to be, this monster that we knew that she could be because she did that in NXT. Like, she was undefeated all that time until she lost to Charlotte. And to sort of see Becky and Asuka have the moment that they had on Raw this past week where they had mutual respect for each other and love for one another professionally just meant the world for me to see because sometimes on television, they make it seem like, oh, well, they give off the impression, and it's incorrect, because I know it's incorrect, that women can't get along and all we ever seek to do is compete with each other, and all this other stuff. But my thing is, there's also the moments in which we can uplift one another and, respect one another and love one another and encourage one another to become better. And I feel like Becky doing that for Asuka, and Asuka having worked to earn it at the Money in the Bank, pay-per-view, just meant the world for me to see. And it was just absolutely beautiful. And I, for one, can't wait to see Asuka in this Raw Women's title reign. I hope she tears it up and she makes the women sort of, rise to the occasion of facing her. And I just can't wait to see what else Becky Lynch has to do next. And that's it for Wrestling Fan Story Time. And now we're going to go to This Week in Wrestling with the main event. All right, so we're going to discuss everything that happened in WWE this week with the main event. I'm going to talk about all the parts on Raw that I liked and some that I did not like and everything in between. So I just mentioned about the whole Becky Lynch Asuka thing, and that started off Raw. And congrats again to Becky and Seth. So Humberto Carrillo had a no disqualification match with Bobby Lashley. Now, something that Bobby Lashley has been doing as of late is sort of bouncing back his character from the whole Lana fiasco. It's becoming less about him and Lana and more about just himself as a performer and him not getting distracted. And here lately, he's just been on a tear. And he actually, even though Humberto Carrillo actually put forth a really good fight up against him, Lashley was just smashing him spine first into the ring post and just, giving him all kinds of full Nelsons and submissions and all of that. And it was just, and that match basically ended with Lashley being dominant and he won. And then also something here lately that's been happening has sort of been this dynamic between him and MVP. It's like MVP is like tripling between being a manager and a wrestler and a host. So MVP basically told Lana, that he felt like, he was going to be a better manager than Lana could ever be. And of course, Lana was disrespected. She felt all kinds of disrespected from that. So it's like Bobby Lashley's getting more and more focused. So it's going to be interesting, that dynamic. Then we also had Akira Tozawa versus Angel Garza. And with this match, you kind of saw the implosion of Los Ingobernables de Estados Unidos, which makes me mad because I really, really liked them in their dynamic with Zelina Vega and Andrade. But somehow or another, they just decided that they were just going to beef. And it just makes me mad because I'm just like, this really could have been a full-on stable and now they're just going to tear them apart. But basically, Angel Garza beat Tozawa. And I thought it was interesting because Akira Tozawa is booked so differently on NXT than he is on Raw. And it's so sad because it seems like on Raw, he's sort of like some jobber type person. But then it's like when he's in the NXT Cruiserweight Championship tournament, he's like sometimes dominant and sometimes basically winning some of his matches. So I'm just kind of like, how does this happen? It's just weird how he's just getting squashed one place and then, being dominant in another place. But quite honestly, it was good to see, Angel Garza win this match. But yet he was sort of showing off to Austin Theory, basically giving off the impression that he was better than him. So it was just kind of strange. But then also with that segment came Drew McIntyre versus Andrade. And this excited me because I was ready to see Drew and Andrade fight because, of course, they had that really amazing match that they had in NXT where Andrade wound up winning the NXT championship against Drew. And it was just like, just like an amazing thing to witness. Now, mind you, it wasn't like on the same level as their classic match at NXT TakeOver that time, but it was still just as good. And I wanted Andrade to win this match so bad because I just want him to be a contender for a top title because I know he is absolutely worth it. But he wound up losing because Drew's on a tear because he's champ. And hopefully, this isn't the end of their feud. But now McIntyre sort of brought up this whole brand to brand invitational thing that they're doing, I guess, for ratings or whatever. And it's cool and everything, but he's going to be facing King Corbin on Monday. So that's going to be interesting to see and interesting to look at, even though I can't stand King Corbin. We'll see what happens from that. And then also in another amazing thing that happened, you had the Iconics returning and defeating Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross was having their regular Moment of Bliss show, and they were congratulating, Becky and Seth and everything on their baby. But then they got interrupted by the Iconics. Now, they've been gone for a while, but now they're back, and there were lots of rumors saying they were getting rebranded and all that, but they came back just as their regular characters, and they were making fun of the whole Becky Lynch situation, as was a lot of people were doing that night. But basically, they had challenged Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross to a championship match. But then they even went back and said that they don't have to fight for the titles right now, but we'll still beat you. And they wound up beating them. So their charisma is still in check. Everything they had is still in check. So hopefully they'll have a tag team championship opportunity down the line. And I'm so happy that they're back. Then you had R-Truth and Ricochet and Cedric Alexander versus Brendan Vink, Shane Thorne, and MVP. The funniest part and the most entertaining part of this whole match was basically R-Truth pretending to be his cousin Pretty Ricky. And in my head, every time he kept saying, every time he kept saying Pretty Ricky in my head, the first thing I thought it was Pretty Ricky, Ricky, Ricky. Pretty Ricky, Ricky, Ricky. It's 5 a.m. Okay, only some of y'all probably know about that. But anyway, that's the only thing that just kept popping in my head as I was, fighting. And even though MVP sort of collecting some people, like this tag team and Bobby Lashley, for this, faction or whatever, it just felt weird to sort of see them, like lose to Cedric, Ricochet, and Truth like that. But I mean, it's whatever. I just feel strange about Ricochet and Cedric Alexander in a tag team, because I feel like they both move well together in terms of their wrestling styles. Like, they definitely complement one another, but I'm interested to see what more can they do in terms of character work. So I guess they'll still have more to offer with that. And then we have this little segment with Aleister Black and Rey Mysterio versus Seth Rollins and Murphy. And oh my God. Seth Rollins was looking all crazy in the face. And I guess he was mad because he lost his match to Drew McIntyre. And he was basically not participating in the match the entire time until, of course, there was a point where I believe Rey Mysterio had hit Seth Rollins and basically snapped him out of whatever funk he was in, I guess, from either losing to Drew or finding out supposedly kayfabe that he's going to be a dad now. And he beat up on Rey Mysterio, but then he almost took like a serial killer approach and beat up on Rey Mysterio, and then also mashed his eye against the steel steps and injured him. And it was just like, whoa, what's wrong, Seth? Who hurt you? Why? But it was just a lot. So I guess now he's just sort of lost and trying to find his way, because he's not champion now, So I guess, and then now he's not really a put together messiah either, like he's, supposedly was. So now he's just lost, and it's just, I hope he finds his way, or whatever. And then you had Natalya versus Shayna Baszler. And Shayna was mad, of course, that she lost, the Money in the Bank match. And she was actually being the harshest in terms of Becky Lynch's pregnancy. She basically said that she felt like it was stupid that Becky Lynch would actually get pregnant while she's a dominant champion and all of that. And like, you're at the top of your career, why would you wait till now to have a child and all this other stuff? And a lot of people felt like what she had to say was just kind of rough or whatever. But I thought it was kind of funny that she brought that up, because something in life that a lot of people, have questions about in terms of women and motherhood is just the idea of being able to balance a career and all of that. But it makes me weird it doesn't make me weird. I just think it's kind of weird how people bring that up with, mothers having children and questioning whether or not they're going to keep their career, as opposed to when, the father is having a child and they never truly question whether or not he's going to work, because it's expected for him to work. It's sort of expected for a woman to sort of, passe everything off for, her baby. And that's not to say that, they're And that's not to say that that's a bad thing. You know, if you choose to take on motherhood full time, then kudos to you. Please do that. But we can't also pretend that in society that when women have children that we don't just that society just sort of gives off the impression that a woman just has to give up everything, including her career, for her baby. And I thought it was funny that Shayna, you know, mentioned that, but she was just being really mean about it. But I thought it was just kind of funny. But aside from that, Natalia had called Shayna a fake wrestler, and it was just kind of rough. But along with that, there was also the basketball game that the Street Profits had with the Viking Raiders. And that was really interesting because throughout the entire night, you know, the Street Profits were giving off all these vibes of basketball references with Jordan and LeBron and all of that, which is a debate that a lot of us have heard, you know, go back and forth, like which one's better in their prime, you know, and all this other stuff. And the Street Profits wound up, you know, winning the entire game because they scored, you know, 72-3 because the Viking Raiders were pretending that they didn't understand what basketball was. But then as it turns out, they were actually really good at basketball because at the end of the game, they showed what their skills actually were. And they were basically saying, see, everything you can do, we can do just as better. And it sort of gives off this, you know, vibe that they really feel like the Street Profits shouldn't be tag team champions at all. Which is not true. But anyway, also one of the other beautiful basketball references that they had made was the fact that Angelo Dawkins and Montez Ford had on jerseys made by Bianca Belair because they shared that on social media. And their jersey numbers were 8 and 24 as tribute to Kobe Bryant. And it was nice to see because someone on Twitter I saw, as I was live tweeting, someone on Twitter said, why didn't they mention Kobe? Well, they paid tribute to Kobe with their numbers. So that was really cool. And then at the end of the show, you had Edge and Randy Orton, you know, talking at each other basically, you know, and Edge was talking about how the match went at WrestleMania and all of that and how he's looking forward to facing new opponents, right? But Randy Orton, you know, reared in his ugly head and was like, congratulations, the better man won. But then he came back in the ring and said, you know, you have nothing on me in terms of natural wrestling ability. You know, let's see who will actually win in an actual wrestling match. And I think what kind of made me mad about it was just the fact that even though Edge was just sort of standing there looking at him like he was scared, it's just the fact that you're making it seem like Edge doesn't have good natural wrestling ability on his own either. Now, I understand that Randy Orton has wrestling in his blood because his granddad was a wrestler and his dad was a wrestler. You know, we know the bloodline. That's fantastic. But Edge had to work twice as hard, you know, to be good at wrestling simply because of the fact that he didn't come from a wrestling family and all the other stuff. He worked to get to this point. And to sort of give off the impression that Edge can't wrestle when we've clearly seen that he can, just kind of makes no sense now. So I don't know. I guess maybe I'm just bitter because I'm just ready for Edge to fight more, you know, people besides Randy Orton. But I don't know. We'll see. So that's everything that happened on Monday Night Raw. And now we're going to go to NXT. All right, so now we're going to talk about everything that happened on NXT. So, on the commentary table, we had Byron Saxton, Morrow, and Beth Phoenix. So, to talk about the women, Tegan Nox and Indy Hartwell fought each other, and Indy Hartwell kept yelling at Tegan Nox and kept saying, "You're not impressive," as she kept slamming her and kicking Tegan again to a near fall. She even stomped her arm, but then Hartwell was stomping her in the corner. But then somehow or another, Hartwell got distracted, and Tegan Nox hit the shiniest wizard for the win. Also in the women's division, you had a recap of Rhea Ripley's return on NXT last week after the match between Io Shirai and Charlotte Flair for the NXT Women's Championship. Charlotte Flair basically used underhanded, tactics to win the match by hitting Io Shirai with a kendo stick, and she got disqualified. And she was about to injure Io Shirai by running her leg into the steel steps, but then Rhea Ripley came out to help her, and Charlotte ran away. But then Io wasn't really, that warm to the idea of getting help from Rhea Ripley, so they actually got to fighting backstage. But it also led to Rhea Ripley, saying this past Wednesday that WrestleMania didn't go as she planned, and she talked about how Io put up a good fight last week, but the person who is going to bring the title back to NXT is me, and we are just getting started, as Ric Flair used to say. And she said that she wasn't going to rest until that title is back with her. Also, in the women's division, you had a clip of Dakota Kai talking about her turn and her alliance with Raquel Gonzalez. She was talking about how they both know what it's like to be labeled misfits, as Raquel Gonzalez rode in on an amazing looking motorcycle, and they basically said that they planned on hurting all of the women in the division, and they stood up on a sidewalk looking all kinds of freaking awesome. And also with the women, you also had like Kaden Carter versus Aaliyah. Aaliyah was trying to impress the Robert Stone brand, and it was just really interesting how she just kept trying to impress Robert Stone, with her match and with her clothes and everything. Kaden Carter took down Aaliyah and tried to go for a submission. There was a drop kick to a near fall from Kaden Carter. Then Aaliyah got more aggressive in the corner. In fact, she's gotten more aggressive than we had ever seen her get. And but then Kaden Carter hit a deathlock submission on Aaliyah for the win. And after she lost her match, Robert Stone was looking at Aaliyah kind of like, I'm not sure, you're not really impressing me and all of that. So he kind of just walked away. And then they also announced that Io Shirai and Rhea Ripley are going to fight next week. And then, of course, you also had dinner with the Garganos, and Candice LeRae was talking about how she's sick of basically Mia Yim getting all the opportunities, to face Charlotte Flair and all this other stuff, when all she does is pander to the fans. And she basically dismissed, her and Johnny both dismissed Keith Lee and Mia Yim as a power couple. And basically they were just talking about how, wonderful they are as couples. And Johnny was talking about how people love Keith Lee now, but basically they'll turn on him the same way they did, him, and how people are leeches until, and they'll bleed you dry until they move on to the next, Keith Lee, and how they're going to show them what glory feels like. So that's basically what happened in the women's division. Now for the men, the show started with Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher fighting for the NXT Tag Team Championships against Imperium's Fabian Eichner and Marcel Bartel. And there was a submission battle between Timothy Thatcher and Bartel. Matt got slammed by Eichner, but then jumped on Eichner, and then they battled with multiple suplexes to each other. Timothy got kicked in the head by accident by Riddle, and Tim checked out of the match and just left him, by himself. And Matt Riddle tried to fight back as hard as he could, but he got knocked out with the European Bomb, and then he wound up losing the tag titles to Imperium. Now, Tim was backstage after this happened, and he called Matt Riddle a hot mess and that he isn't about the nonsense. But then Riddle got in his face, and they started fighting backstage until they got broken up by officials. And then they got placed in a match by William Regal. But after it was announced, Timothy Thatcher attacked Matt Riddle from behind with a monitor, and that was crazy. Then we had a Group A match in the Cruiserweight Championship tournament between Tony Nese and Jake Atlas. Now, in this situation, Nese was going to be the spoiler, and they say that because Nese had lost, so many matches. So now if he had basically fought in this match, I believe he would not have gone forward in the tournament. So either way, that I don't think that win would have meant anything. But Atlas started with the headlock, and then Nese went for the attack, but then Tony Atlas escaped. Then Nese hit a knee strike, and Atlas was trying to do some kicks, but then Nice connected with hurtful elbow strikes. And then there was an impressive leaping neck breaker from Jake Atlas. He was just doing impressive stuff all throughout this match. And Nice kept attacking Atlas with kicks on the top rope, and he kept yelling at him, "You think you're better than me? You think you're better than me?" But then Atlas hit a rainbow DDT to win and advance in the tournament. So now Tony Nese is out. And then they did a Zoom call with the Undisputed Era, and they were talking about how much they miss each other's faces. And and then Adam Cole was talking about how he felt like the Velveteen Dream was a joke. And he talked about how he's going to take care of Dexter Lumis, and the group basically collectively decided that Roderick Strong was going to face Dexter Lumis at some point. And they kept talking about how they're going to embarrass the Velveteen Dream. And it upsets me that I keep saying they're going to embarrass the Velveteen Dream when I just got my Velveteen Dream chalk line jacket. So his face is looking at me right now. I love you. But then there was this really cool segment with Karrion Kross and Scarlett Bordeaux. And he was saying that after his triumphant debut a few weeks ago, against a jobber, I can't remember his name right now, but he fought a jobber and he basically won that match in very dominant fashion. He's a monster. In this segment this week, he said, "We are not here to shock a system or save you from your black hearts. It's time to wake up from your dreams." And while he was making all of these references to NXT wrestlers, on the main roster now, there was this theme song that was playing that was called "The End Is Here," from Judgment Day from the early 2000s. I don't know if you guys remember, but there was a pay-per-view. They had two pay-per-views a long time ago called Judgment Day and Armageddon. And they would play these hard rock songs all the time. And one of them was called "The End Is Here." And it was playing behind him. And I thought that was really cool because when he debuted, his theme song just kept giving me all of these early 2000s, rock and roll, Godsmack type of vibes. And I was just Metallica type of vibes. And I was just like, man, like, this is amazing. And then Scarlett, as a manager, she was just kind of like bringing a whole lot of heat to it and all that. And it also helps, to know that they're like a couple. But other than that, like that debut was really cool. And then we got a throwback to DX with Triple H and Shawn Michaels. They were backstage and they basically announced that WWE will be having an NXT takeover, and it's going to be called Takeover in Your House on Sunday, June the 7th. And I'm pretty sure it's going to take place at the Performance Center. And they were talking about how it's the 25th anniversary of WWE's pay-per-view called In Your House. And for those who don't know, when they say that something is a house show, that basically means like it's not like a major show that's meant to be on television, but it's sort of like a regular show that they do for crowds to come to, but they don't really put it on television. They may put it on social media a little bit, like in clips, but they won't put it like all over like television or the network or something like that unless it's something special. So that's going to be happening, and the logo was really cute and colorful. So there. Then we had the match between Finn Balor and Cameron Grimes. Now, I'm a little bit on the struggle bus when it comes to Cameron Grimes, because at some points it's like he's really sharp with his attacks, but then there are some of his hits in terms of, punches and arm strikes and everything, it just seems like he's just kind of sloppy. So I just don't really know about him just yet. So, while this match was going on, there were a lot of, good key points. But one of the most exciting things that happened was the fact that Damian Priest attacked Finn Balor with the nightstick, and Cameron Grimes capitalized on it for the win. So he actually won the match against Finn Balor. And then Damian Priest brought the chair and basically does the Reckoning finishing move on Finn with the chair. And he states, if I want my name to live forever in infamy, why not attack a prince? So he confessed to being the attacker on Finn Balor, the snake in the long grass, as Finn Balor said. And the show ended with Timothy Thatcher versus Matt Riddle. And Riddle started with all kinds of strikes and everything, because that's what he's, mostly known for after, with his background in the MMA. And then Thatcher was battling back with all kinds of grappling type of wrestling. But Riddle kept bouncing back with kicks, and then Thatcher stepped on Riddle's foot and then wrestled him down. And he punished him with all kinds of submissions. Then Riddle hit a power bomb, but Thatcher kept targeting Riddle's leg. And Riddle hit the bro to sleep on Thatcher, but then hit a flying bro. But then as he was trying to hit the flying bro, Thatcher caught him and locked in an arm bar and then a leg bar. But Riddle refused to give up. Then Riddle rolled Timothy Thatcher's shoulders for the win, but Thatcher kept attacking Riddle's arm multiple times. So I don't know if this means that Matt Riddle is going to be injured for a while. I don't know. But it was a pretty rough ending to NXT Wednesday night. So I'm intrigued to see what's going to go on there. And now we're going to go to talk about SmackDown. Okay, and now we're on to SmackDown. There was a lot that took place last night, but I'm going to start with the women. Naomi, who was rocking rough and stuff with her Afro puffs again, fought Dana Brooke. And it started with a lockup, and Naomi hit a roll-up and a flying clothesline to a near fall. And then Dana hit two of her signature flips and tried to do it, tried to do it a second time. But then she wound up getting kicked down. But then Dana Brooke, I think, won with a roll-up by sitting on Naomi's shoulders. And Naomi was looking like she really didn't understand, what was going on. Like, she was kind of mad that she lost to her again. And I think Naomi was giving off, the impression that she was frustrated. And I'm hoping that this is leading towards a heel turn for her, because I can't imagine Naomi just being, being poo-pooed off to the side after the triumphant comeback that she had at the Royal Rumble a few months ago. And also the fact that, she went viral and all of that with her natural hair and all that. So I just can't imagine her, just losing to Dana Brooke. But I don't want to undermine Dana Brooke, because she actually deserves, a few wins and everything, because there was a time in which Dana Brooke was losing all the time. So I'm glad Dana Brooke is getting this shine, but I'm ready for Naomi to unleash this angry part of her. So that's gonna be interesting. Then they also did a Becky montage, basically, charting the beginning of her career all the way up until the headlining of her and her baby. So that happened, and that was touching. And Charlotte Flair was on SmackDown, and she talked about how much, I noticed that she had a gorgeous smile, and she said, "Here I am on SmackDown," and she basically wondered, she basically said that a bet of fans were wondering how she should be on all three shows. And she said, "Everyone wants more Charlotte Flair. I'm 5'10", blonde, and a Flair," which basically feeds into the things that I guess Fox would want on their network. We're not going to go into that. And basically said that she won 5 of her 11 championships here, but she was interrupted by SmackDown Women's Champion Bayley and Sasha Banks. And it was really cool to see 3 of the 4 horsewomen together again. And Bayley was talking about how Fox basically has a thing for blondes. And she talked about, when the last time she beat her, which I believe was at Money in the Bank last year. No, it was after Money in the Bank last year. And she told her to go back to NXT or back to Raw. Now, how this is our show, you need to get the H out of our ring. But then Charlotte took it upon herself to not only address Bayley, but she addressed Sasha Banks. And this was where it got real interesting. Charlotte said Charlotte basically told Bayley that Sasha made her relevant and that she's the only reason that you're still champion. And she named off all of Sasha's accomplishments in terms of, championships, and how her and Sasha basically main evented Raw 2 times, and how they also main evented, and how they were the first women's main event in a pay-per-view with Hell in a Cell. And now she even asked Sasha that if she's content being an afterthought. And Bayley was interrupting her and basically saying, "You don't understand our friendship." And Charlotte was like, "Can someone in production please cut her mic so Sasha can speak for herself?" And as Miss Banks was trying to speak for herself, Bayley still interrupted her. And it was just so annoying. And I was just like, girl, so you just gonna let her talk over you like that? Because I can't stand it. But Charlotte told Sasha to think long and hard about this. Are you your own woman, or are you just happy being Bayley's lackey? Woo! And then Charlotte accepted Bayley's challenge to a match on SmackDown, which is going to happen next week. Also in the women's division, you had Sonya Deville with Dolph Ziggler, basically cutting a promo dissing Mandy Rose further, and basically saying, what is it that Mandy Rose is good at? Just being blonde and pretty. Where does that leave you? She said that basically after she's finished being pretty, that she's just going to be barefoot with kids screaming in a trailer park, with Otis eating and drinking beer and saying, yeah. And she said, you'll never have a mind like mine, and you'll never be as talented as me, and you don't even deserve to be in the same ring as me. And she told Mandy to get herself together and go home so she can face her in the mixed tag match next week, in the mixed tag match with Otis and Mandy and Dolph, and then called her the B word, because apparently that's the thing that we do now. So yeah, on to the men. The show started with Miz TV, with the Miz and John Morrison, with their intro being interrupted by Otis celebrating his Money in the Bank, a contract win. And he was super crunk. And he even did a cartwheel. But then when he got in the ring, he broke the chair and he stood instead. Then Miz congratulated him, with vitriol behind it. And he basically said that it was the biggest win of Otis's career. And he said, and then they proceeded to ask him very gross questions, like, how did you get with Mandy? And then John Morrison said, like, are you good in the sack? And I literally verbally said, that's none of your business, sir. And he said that sometimes some things in life just crack up, but, he won. And then they also showed baby and childhood pictures of Otis with his mom. And Otis basically shared that he, dealt with a learning disability, but his mother helped maintain his grades so he can, have an athletic career and go on to succeed in wrestling in college and all of that. But Miz was just not believing that he could be Mr. Money in the Bank, and basically said that when the Miz was Mr. Money in the Bank, he, used it to, up his status, in WWE. And he called him sweaty, and then he called him the human version of Shrek. But, Shrek is awesome, so we're not going to do that. And he just told him he was using it as a lunchbox. And then he challenged him to a tag team match, but then Otis's tag team partner, Tucker, was out with some type of sickness from Oregon Trail, and I thought that was funny. But then Miz was just like, find whatever partner you can by the end of the night. So then we had the Intercontinental Championship Tournament first round match with Elias and Baron Corbin. And Elias was starting real hot at Baron Corbin because, their feud sort of started during WrestleMania season. And, they've been going back and forth with each other. So now they're fighting for this. And Elias started at Baron Corbin with punches. Then they went back and forth in ring corners. And Baron Corbin tried for a crab submission, but then Elias powered out. And then Corbin then clotheslined Elias. Corbin put Elias in a headlock, and Elias refused to give up or tap out. Elias got elbows to the neck because Corbin just kept hitting him over and over again in the neck. And then Elias was powering out of a hole, and then he hit a mule kick and knocked Corbin out of the ring. Then Elias jumped off of the top rope onto Corbin. Then Corbin battled back by punching Elias and ran him into the barricade. Then Corbin taunted Elias with the guitar, and then Elias went on the attack and started slamming Corbin onto the steps and threw him over the barricade. Then Elias kept going on, beating him on Corbin, and his arms. And then Elias tried the old school rope walk, but then Corbin tripped him up outside the ring. Then Corbin beat Elias on the commentary table and then covered him and then threw him back in the ring and covered him to a near fall. Then Corbin continued to attack and said, sing for the people at home, sing for the people at home. And then Elias fought back, but then Corbin stayed on the offense and did the run around the post clothesline combo to a near fall. Like, I get so sick of that move. But anyway, and then Elias hit a swinging net breaker and kept punching Corbin on the ropes like rope-a-dope. And Elias just kept feeling the fire from his, comeback. But then Corbin blocked Elias's jump and then tried for a special clothesline again, but then Elias ducked it. And then Elias hit a spine buster on Corbin, Baron Corbin hit a spine buster on Elias, and Elias kicked out. And Corbin hit a choke slam to another near fall and kept asking him if he wanted to quit. But then he kept hitting Elias, and then he even broke Elias's guitar on the ring post. But then Elias kneed Corbin in the face and then rolled up Corbin for the win. So now Elias is going to the second round of the tournament for the Intercontinental title. And something else that I liked about this match was the fact that they kept talking about the history of the Intercontinental title and all of the type of wrestlers who have held it, like in terms of workhorses, and how in the past, if you had won the Intercontinental title, you would automatically get a chance to fight for the main title, like the WWE Championship or the World Heavyweight title or something like that. So I thought that piece of history was interesting to mention, and I thought that was cool because I'm a nerd. Anyway, Otis was backstage and he asked Sheamus to be his partner in the tag match later on. But then Sheamus said, not a chance. But then as he was trying to figure out what his plan was going to be, Mandy, visited him and said, maybe you should ask Braun Strowman. He is the Universal Champion. And then he agreed with her and gave her a kiss on the cheek. And then Otis asked Strowman, and then Strowman was suspicious about it, due to the fact that he's Money in the Bank. You can cash in on them at any point in time. And Otis was really confident that it was going to happen. So after that, also with the men, you had another round one match for the Intercontinental Championship between Daniel Bryan and Drew Gulak. And it was a beautiful technical dance between the two. I didn't really take a whole lot of notes with that because I feel like with a match like that that's so technically sound, you don't want to miss anything. So that match was really beautiful, and I suggest you do watch it back, as is now. It's the final match that Drew Gulak fought in WWE now that he's been released. And something amazing that Daniel Bryan kept doing throughout the match was joint manipulation, and he wound up advancing into the tournament now, and they shook hands. So there was sportsmanship on the part of the two. They announced also that next week AJ Styles will be fighting Shinsuke Nakamura in the tournament, and Charlotte versus Bayley will happen in a champion versus champion match, and Jeff Hardy will battle Sheamus next week as well. So the main event happened. It was Braun and Otis versus Miz and Morrison, and I noticed that Braun Strowman has new graphics in terms of him being a monster and yelling with fire coming out of his mouth on the Titantron. So that was interesting to see. And John Morris, this match was kind of one-sided because when you have somebody like Otis, who's also, big and powerful in terms of his wrestling ability, and then you also have Braun Strowman and the giant Mack truck he is, there's really not that much to say about this match because Otis and Braun won. And Braun basically kind of did most of the work anyway, but they won the match. And as they were celebrating their win after, they hit the caterpillar on John Morrison, and it was kind of a failed caterpillar on Braun Strowman's part, but, he tried. And after that, as they were celebrating, Mandy Rose came out there, to sort of distract Braun Strowman. And Otis gave off the impression that he was going to try to cash in on Braun, but Braun caught him. He was like, whoa, wait a minute. And Otis was like, nope, I'm just kidding. And then Mandy came in the ring to celebrate with them and everything. And then the show ended with that. So there's a lot of intrigue behind the idea that Otis kind of knows exactly the type of power he holds. And I think it was irritating that Corey Graves kept saying, does Otis even know the power that he holds? And I'm just like, clear. And my dad was like, well, duh, clearly he does, because if he didn't, he wouldn't have tried to cash in on him right then. So y'all don't sleep on Otis. Don't sleep on him just because he goofy and funny. It's like I said earlier, you can be goofy and funny and still be about your father's business. So pretty compelling stuff this week. So now that's the end of the main event segment, and we're just gonna go on to the conclusion. All right. So thank you for tuning into my show. I am absolutely thrilled to say that so much is happening with this podcast, and I'm so blessed that people are actually listening to me and also very perceptive of what I have to talk about and have to offer on here. So if you're new to the podcast, I ask that you please follow me on social media, on Twitter at Queen Steph Hardy and at Hardy WrestlePod. And that you also follow me on Instagram at Hardy Wrestling Podcast and at Queen Steph Hardy there. And I'm also putting together a YouTube channel. I have one episode, my last episode of the podcast on there. And that YouTube channel is called Hardy Wrestling with Stephanie Hardy. And I hope to, in the future, put all of the episodes on there at some point. I'm trying to figure out the software and everything to do that. But in the meantime, this episode will be on YouTube probably by tonight, and if not tonight, tomorrow. And I'm just really grateful for all of this. And please tune in next week, because I will be having a special interview with my very first indie wrestler, Adonis Staples, aka Prince Adonis, from Memphis, Tennessee, in 901 Wrestling. And I'll have your usual news and gossip-ish and everything that's going to happen this week in wrestling as well. So, like I said, please follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Hardy WrestlePod and Hardy Wrestling Podcast. And just continue to support and tell your friends about it. If you have any wrestling fan friends, tell them about it. If you have any nerd friends who are looking to get into wrestling, tell them about it. Just share and just continue to support as much as you can. And until we meet again, I hope you have a fantastic weekend and an even better week in wrestling and just in life, period. I love you all so very much. And this is Hardy Wrestling with me, Stephanie Hardy, signing off. Bye.